It's I again. I hope you're okay and safe. This is an audio discussion recording on intercultural communication. Just a quick review regarding our previous topic, communication for various purposes. I hope you still remember the 5 general purposes for communicating, the definition of media literacy, the definition of communication competence, and of course, the relevance of knowing all of these things, where we could apply what we have learned, and the advantages of knowing, understanding, and using the things that we learned from the last meeting. If you have questions or insights, kindly post it in our BBL discussion board, or you can share it during our synchronous BBL Collaborate session. As an introduction to this topic, I'll be showing you a photo. Later on, I'll reveal to you the other parts of the photo. But for now, I'll just emphasize that the photo is situated in an international airport, so international arrivals. And if you see this first guy, his reaction is, what do I do now? So he seems confused and unsure of what he needs to do. Why? So let's look at the next panel. So there's this guy bowing and giving his card. And in his mind, he's thinking, when is he going to take my card? So he's bowing, giving his card, while this other guy is actually extending his hand for a handshake. And then another person. So there's this woman leaning forward, and then she's thinking he seems a bit unfriendly. Why? So looking at the reaction of the guy, and then in his mind, he's thinking, whoa, personal space invasion, meaning he's not used to having a woman or any other person very close to him, most especially if that's a stranger or just an acquaintance. And then on the last panel, there's this guy with his hands together and thinking, I'm next, what should I do? So if you notice, it's really filled with different cultures. And if we're not aware of the differences of practices and behavior and norms and beliefs, we wouldn't be able to respond accordingly. And it will be very chaotic and very awkward. But of course, hopefully, from the start of our discussion, we have already emphasized that culture is always at play in communication. And hopefully, we achieve a certain level, a high level of cultural competence. So we would be able to communicate better with our fellow Filipinos and, of course, intercultural with other people from the different parts of the globe. Intercultural communication is the exchange of information between individuals who are unalike culturally. So when there are differences in the aspects of culture like language, food, beliefs, norms, clothing, then that can be considered as intercultural communication. We could better understand this if we have cultural sensitivity, meaning awareness of the potential similarities and the differences, and also cultural competence. We have an understanding of the differences and still be able to respect the diversity. There are 5 cultural characteristics that we have to be aware of so as to heighten our cultural sensitivity and our cultural competence. This would hopefully help us better understand other people despite the differences of culture. Number 1, individualistic versus collectivistic. Number 2, low context versus high context. 3, uncertainty accepting versus uncertainty rejecting. Number 4, implicit rule versus explicit rule. And number 5, monochronic versus polychronic. We'll discuss each of these pairs of cultural characteristics as we proceed. For the first one, individualistic versus collectivistic, if you could read it, I hope you could. Individualistic cultures value individual freedom, choice, uniqueness, and independence, while collectivistic cultures value group, family, tribe, clan, and culture over the individual. Individualistic focus on the individual, collectivistic focus on the group. An example is this. So the Dutch value the individual, while in Peru, the family is more important. Maybe you could relate with the collectivistic culture. We as Filipinos were more of a collectivist type of mindset. That's why when we receive something nice, our go-to response or reaction would be, I have to tell this to my family, I have to share this with my family. So we always think as a group, or we always think of our group. Okay, so that's collectivistic culture. Low context communication styles emphasize the source of communication with intentions stated overtly or explicitly. However, in high context cultures, much of the information about the source, the intentions, and other information is understood but not explicitly stated. To better explain this, we'll use this example. I must state that North American and European cultures, including Norway, communicate with a direct verbal style, meaning what they mean is what they say. However, in Argentina, some things we do not say, they are simply understood. It's like expecting that people would understand them, even if they do not explicitly or directly stated. Now, I think we, as Filipinos, we could relate more with high context cultures. That sometimes the silence could mean a yes, could mean a no, depending on the facial expression, depending on the mood, depending on the context. So there are a lot of things that we have to consider in high context cultures. Unlike for North American, European, Norway cultures, if they say yes, then that's a yes. If they say no, then that's a no. Low context culture. Uncertainty accepting cultures are far more likely to tolerate ambiguity and diversity. When we talk about ambiguity, it means that the meaning is unsure. It could mean a yes, it could mean a no, diversity differences. Uncertainty rejecting cultures have a more difficult time accepting these things. So an example, an Indian culture accepts uncertainty and ambiguity. Their culture is okay with it. However, in France, it's quite different. So when we talk about uncertainty or ambiguity, I think Filipinos could also relate to this. So for example, when we're offered food, would you like some spaghetti? Usually a Filipino might answer probably with okay lang, but we're not really sure what okay lang means. it's ambiguous. Is it a yes or is it a no? But here in the Philippines, it's like, kailangan pilitin mo muna, or sige, kahit okay lang yung sinagot, bigyan mo na rin. But in other cultures, in France, that means it's okay if they don't give you the plate of spaghetti, meaning, all right, you won't mind. If they do give it to you, then if they don't understand, then they won't give it, probably, because they're not very accepting of ambiguity or diversity. So hopefully we do understand that when we're in a different place and their culture is uncertainty rejecting, we really have to learn how to answer directly or properly or say what we mean. Implicit rule versus explicit rule. Implicit rules are implied rules for behavior in a culture and are implicitly known, meaning they're expected to know it, while explicit cultures are more likely to openly discuss procedures for action and expectations for behavior. Example, in my culture, one should not question society's rules, very conservative. If there is a rule, they're just expected to observe it and obey it. However, in the US, we can discuss behavioral expectations. If they're not comfortable with one rule, they could suggest to change it, or they have to be open to negotiations. Monochronic cultures view time as compartmentalized between task, personal, and social dimensions, while polychronic cultures view time as culturally based and relationally oriented. What does it mean? When we say compartmentalized, meaning it's really divided. They have time for task, personal, and social. So it's different. The time for task is different. The time for personal is different. And time for social is different. However, for polychronic cultures, it could be a combination. During their task time, it could also be a personal time. It could be a social time. An example would be, it's been nice chatting, but I need to leave for my meeting, meaning very compartmentalized. This is a social chat conversation. Now I have to go to my task. However, with this guy from Morocco, we still have time to talk. Your meeting doesn't start for another 5 minutes. So there could be an overlap between the preparation for the meeting and the meeting. So it's culturally and relationally oriented. I hope this is clear. Strategies to improve intercultural communication. Number one, we have to conduct a personal assessment. How much do we really know about other cultures? It could be a reflection. As a Filipino, how much do I know about the Philippines? How much do I know about America? How much do I know about South Korea? So we have to be honest with ourselves. If it's too limited, maybe because we do not travel that much yet, then how do we learn about these other cultures? Number two, avoid stereotypes. What are stereotypes? Generalization or oversimplification of cultures. Just by meeting one South Korean, we have this thinking or perspective that he or she is everything to know about South Korea. So hopefully that's not the case. Although yes, he is or she is a South Korean, but of course, personal preferences would still be at play. Number three, avoid ethnocentrism. What is ethnocentrism? It's the belief that own culture is superior, and that is going to be very problematic if we keep on thinking that our own culture is better than anybody else's. Number four, manage conflicting beliefs and practices. As we have discussed, there would always be cultures that are different from us, and hopefully if there would be a conflicting belief or a conflicting practice, we would, number five, be able to openly communicate about it, honestly ask about it, and maybe ask how we could behave properly during that time of differences, if it's in the office or conference or meeting, so that we're not going to offend other people. It's always good to ask properly and ethically, still going back to ethical communication for cultural practices that we don't understand or maybe against our own beliefs. As a review or conclusion, why is it important to know about intercultural communication? What are the practical applications for our personal everyday life, for our workplace, for our community and society? Number one, I think it's all about being aware of the diversity of the differences and the ability to respect these differences. Of course, one of the course outcomes of English 40 is to target audiences within the local and global workplaces. So when the time comes, when we need to communicate more to other people from the different parts of the globe, we can do it with respect. Course policies and requirements, kindly just run through this, hopefully be reminded accordingly.